Okay, Prabhu.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaturvanidina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam
Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam
Svayambhuva Kadamaya Darati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatayubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna
Krishna
Hare Hare Rama
Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Rishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Desha Tarine. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Let me share the verses.
Okay.
Okay, Prabhu.
Okay, so we're studying Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 6, entitled Sankhya Yoga, text 37. And my understanding is we're studying text 37, 38, and 39.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, so starting with 37, Arjuna Uvacha.
Arjuna Uvacha
Ayati
Ayati
Shradhaya
Shradhaya
Upeta
Upetaha
Yogat
Yogat
Dalita
Chalita
Anasa
Manasaha
Aprapya
Aprapya
Yoga Samsiddhim
Yoga Samsiddhim
Kam Gatim
Gatim
Krishna
Krishna
Gachati
Gacchati.
Arjuna Uvacha
Arjuna Uvacha
Ayati Shradhayopeto
Ayati Shradhayopeto
Yogachalita Manasa
Yogakshalitamanasaha
Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim
Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim
Gatim Krishna Gachati
Tam Gatim Krishna Gacchati.
Arjuna Uvacha
Arjuna Uvacha
Ayati Shradhayopeto
Ayati Shradhayopeto
Yogachalita manasa.
Yogakshalitamanasah
Prapya yoga samsiddhim.
Aprapya yoga samsiddhim
Kam gatim Krishna gachati.
Kam gatim Krishna gacchati.
Arjuna uvacha.
Arjuna uvacha
Ayati shradhayopeto.
Ayati Shradhayopeto
Yogachalita manasa.
Yoga Chalitamanasah
Prapya yoga samsiddhim.
Aprapya yoga samsiddhim
Kam gatim Krishna gachati.
Tam gatim Krishna gacchati. Any other devotees would like to chant?
Arjuna Vacha
Arjuna Vacha
Ayati Shraddayo Peto
Ayati Shradhayopeto
Yogachalita Manasaha
Yoga Chalitamanasah
Aprapya Yogo Samsiddhim
Aprapya yoga samsiddhim
Kam Gatim Krishna Gacchati.
Kam gatim Krishna gacchati.
Arjuna Vacha
Arjuna Vacha
Ayati Shradhayopeto
Ayati Shradhayopeto
Yoga Chalita Manasaha
Yoga Chalitamanasah
Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim
Aprapya yoga samsiddhim
Kim Gatim Krishna Gacchati.
Kam gatim Krishna gacchati.
Arjuna Uvacha
Arjuna Vacha
Ayati Shraddhayopeto
Ayati Shradhayopeto
Yoga Chalita Manasaha
Yoga Chalitamanasah
Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim
Aprapya yoga samsiddhim
Kam Gatim Krishna Gacchati.
Kam gatim Krishna gacchati.
Okay, we'll go to the word for word. Arjuna uvacha.
Arjuna Vacha
Arjuna said,
Arjuna said,
Ayati,
Ayati,
unsuccessful transcendentalist,
unsuccessful transcendentalist,
Shradhaya,
Shraddhaya,
with faith,
with faith,
Upeta,
Upeta,
engaged,
engaged,
Yogat,
Yogat,
from the mystic link,
from the mystic link,
Shalita,
Shalita,
deviated,
deviated,
Manasa,
Manasa,
of one who has such a mind,
of one who has such a mind,
Prapya,
Aprapya,
failing,
failing,
Yoga samsiddhim,
Yoga samsiddhim,
highest perfection in mysticism,
highest perfection in mysticism,
Kam,
Kam,
which,
which
Gatim,
gatim,
destination,
destination,
Krishna,
Krishna,
oh Krishna,
O Krishna,
Gachati,
gacchati,
achieves.
achieves.
Translation. Arjuna said, what is the destination of the man of faith who does not persevere, who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The path of self-realization or mysticism is described in the Bhagavad Gita. The basic principle of self-realization is knowledge that the living entity is not this body, not this material body, but that he is different from it, and that his happiness is in eternal life, bliss, and knowledge. These are transcendental, beyond both body and mind. Self-realization is sought by the path of knowledge, the practice of the Eightfold Yoga system, or by Bhakti Yoga. In each of these processes, one has to realize the constitutional position of the living entity, his relationship with God, and the activities whereby he can reestablish the lost link and achieve the highest perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness. Following any of the above mentioned three methods, one is sure to reach the supreme goal sooner or later. This was asserted by the Lord in the second chapter. Even a little endeavor on the transcendental path offers a great hope for deliverance. Out of these three methods, the path of Bhakti Yoga is especially suitable for this age because it is the most direct method of God realization. To be doubly assured, Arjuna is asking Lord Krishna to confirm his former statement. One may sincerely accept the path of self-realization, but the process of cultivation of knowledge and the practice of the Eightfold Yoga system are generally very difficult for this age. Therefore, despite constant endeavor, one may fail for many reasons. First of all, one may not be following the process. To pursue the transcendental path is more or less to declare war on illusory energy. Consequently, when a person tries to escape the clutches of the illusory energy, she tries to defeat the practitioner by various allurements. A conditioned soul is already allured by the modes of material energy, and there is every chance of being allured again, even while performing transcendental disciplines. This is called yoga chalita manasa, deviation from the transcendental path. Arjuna is inquisitive to know the results of deviation from the path of self-realization. Text 38. Kachinopaya vibrastas china brahm ivanashati apratishto mahabaho vimudo brahmanapati. O mighty armed Krishna, does not such a man, being deviated from the path of transcendence, perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. There are two ways to progress. Those who are materialists have no interest in transcendence. Therefore, they are more interested in material advancement by economic development or in promotion to the higher planets by appropriate work. When one takes to the path of transcendence, one has to cease all material activities and sacrifice all forms of so-called material happiness. If the aspiring transcendentalist fails, then he apparently loses both ways. In other words, he can enjoy neither material happiness nor spiritual success. He has no position. He is like a riven cloud. A cloud in the sky sometimes deviates from a small cloud and joins a big one. But if it cannot join a big one, then it is blown away by the wind and becomes a non-entity in the vast sky. The Brahmanapati is the path of transcendental realization through knowing oneself to be spiritual in essence, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, who is manifested as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Lord Sri Krishna is the fullest manifestation of the supreme absolute truth, and therefore one who is surrendered to the Supreme Person is a successful transcendentalist. To reach this goal of life through Brahman and Paramatma realization takes many, many births, bahunam janmanam ante. Therefore, the supermost of transcendental realization is Bhakti Yoga, or Krishna consciousness, the direct method. Text 39. Etan me samshayam Krishna chetum arhas yasheshata tvaranya samshayasyasya chetana yopapadyate. This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for yourself, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Krishna is the perfect knower of past, present, and future. In the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord said that all living entities exist individually in the past, that they exist now in the present, and that they continue to retain individual identity in the future, even after liberation from the material entanglement. So he has already cleared up the question of the future of the individual living entity. Now, Arjuna wants to know of the future of the unsuccessful transcendentalist. No one is equal to or above Krishna, and certainly the so-called great sages and philosophers who are at the mercy of material nature cannot equal him. Therefore, the verdict of Krishna is the final and complete answer to all doubts, because he knows past, present, and future perfectly, but no one knows him. Krishna and Krishna conscious devotees alone can know what is what. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Yes, so, all right, so here we have three verses consecutively spoken by Sri Arjuna. And of course, Krishna is speaking to Arjuna because of Arjuna's special qualification as a devotee of Krishna. That is Arjuna's qualification. As Krishna says in chapter 4, Saeva Yamaya Teja Yoga Prokta Paratana Bhaktosi Me Sakacheti Rasyam Yetadotama Uttama. He says to Arjuna, I'm speaking this to you because you're my devotee and you're my friend. And so Arjuna being a devotee, and he says in the second chapter, Shishasteham Sadimam Tvam Prapanam. Now I'm your disciple. Please guide me. And we can see that doesn't mean that Arjuna is blindly following. So blind following is discouraged in Bhagavad Gita, as is closed-minded cynicism. And so just like if we want to learn anything, even in if we want to learn mathematics or physics, yes, we accept a teacher, we accept a book, we accept a university program, and then we're there. And then part of the process is we have our intelligence fully engaged. And when we're not understanding something, we ask questions. We don't just nod our head and pretend we're understanding something where the dots aren't connecting for me. And at the same time, if the dots aren't connecting for me, it's not like I say, oh, you're just stupid. You don't understand anything. You're a fool. No, like I trust the teacher, the physics teacher. He can help me to understand things that I'm not getting now. So with trust, I use my intelligence and ask questions. So Arjuna has already surrendered to Krishna, Shishasteham Sadinam Tvam Prapanam, and yet he's noticing his doubts, asking questions, and that's part of the surrendering process. Tadvidi pranipatina prapasthena sevaya upadekshanti teginam gyaninas tatvidarshina. To approach, submissively serve, and ask questions in a humble spirit. And then we can understand here. So in the 6th chapter, Arjuna has 2 sets of questions. There's a set of questions before this where Arjuna says, yeah, Krishna, you're saying about all this yoga meditation, but that seems very impractical for me and most everyone, and certainly for us, right? Arjuna is so qualified, but he's saying that seems impractical. And so Arjuna, Krishna responds, yes, with practice and detachment. And now here, Arjuna has another doubt. We can understand, just like, yes. So just like, okay, so let's say if we want, I don't know, we want to become a doctor or a surgeon. Okay, we want to get a medical degree. All right, so we go into a program, and let's say it's a 6-year program, and then an internship, and then, okay, so it's like 8 years altogether. And then let's say I do 2 or 3 years, and then I don't complete. Okay, well, I can still kind of be half a surgeon. No, it's kind of useless. Oh, okay. well, I can be an accountant. No, you can't be an accountant. You spent 3 years doing the medical degree and you didn't complete that, and you didn't learn to be an engineer or an accountant. So it's kind of like a riven cloud. Arjuna uses that metaphor, that like this was like a real waste. We won't be anywhere spiritually or materially if we don't complete. And so we can understand the nature of Arjuna's doubts and questions. We can appreciate it. And then, okay, so and this is earlier in Bhagavad Gita, as Prabhupada references, Krishna describes 40th verse of 2nd chapter, Neha Bikramo Nashosti Pratyavayuna Vijite Swapamapyasya Dharmasya Try Te Matobaya. Krishna says, yeah, this is not like a material endeavor, where it's not like a material endeavor. In spiritual endeavor, there's no loss or diminution. If we do 1%, that 1% is our eternal, enduring benefit and value. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni, he describes to Vyasadeva, Tyaktva Swadharmam Charanam Bhujama Harer, Bhajana Pakota Patetato Yadi, Yatrakvava Bhajamamuda Amushikim, Yad Utamashloka Gunanu Vardhanam. That, no, Kovarta Arto Bhajatam Swadharmatam. I mixed up my Narada Muni verses. And so Narada Muni similarly says, like, yeah, Srila Vyasadeva, you gave all of these Vedas about karma kanda, going to heavenly planets. But even if one makes progress in that, what's the use, really? It's like sandcastles, and the tide comes and washes it away after a year or 100 trillion years. What's the use? And Narada Muni says, and if one makes some progress in this transcendental direct method of bhakti yoga, then what is the loss? Even if one is not complete, what is the loss? So that's the theme here in Arjuna's questions, and then Krishna's responses as we go on in chapter 6. And so the Prabhupada's emphasizing right there. Okay, so real knowledge, the basic principle of self-realization is knowledge that the living entity is not this material body, but he is different from it, and that his happiness is an eternal life, bliss, and knowledge. Okay, so when we talk about knowledge, this is the basic, this is the foundational knowledge. And I was just talking to someone yesterday, someone in our Sattvato Bhakti Yoga community, and she was talking about someone who came from India about 60 years ago, and got renowned as a guru, and gave some process, not in a Vedic line as far as I know, but but then like I was talking about, okay, what's the conception in what this guru is presenting? What's the conception of what is the self? What's the difference between spirit and matter? What's at the substratum? What's at the very foundation of existence? Is it the undifferentiated oneness? Is it nothing? Is it atoms? Is it transcendental personhood? What's the sambandha? What's the abhideya? What's the prayojana? Sambandha means this understanding who we are and our essential connection with the absolute. What are the conceptions of the absolute? And well, from my understanding, there was not clear understanding. And actually, back in the summer of '83, when I was backpacking around Europe, before I read Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, I read a version of Bhagavad Gita by this other Swami who had come from India. And like, I couldn't make heads or tails of it. My impression was that like, wow, I'm reading, it was very sophisticated. And like the fact that I couldn't understand it, that was like the goal. It's like, I'm supposed to go, wow, he must be really smart or something like that. Okay. And then on that same summer, backpacking around Europe, actually I stopped for a few weeks at Villa Vrindavan in Italy, outside of Florence, and I read Bhagavad Gita as it is cover to cover. And then it's just like, Prabhupada, this is very clear. I mean, I might like it or not like it, but it wasn't just like mystical word jugglery, aren't I smart? It's like, he's really trying to get us to get, we're not the body, we're spirit, soul, Jivara, Srupoi, Krishna, we're eternal servants of Krishna. So, so this is, you know, it says Jnanam, Vijnanam, this is the essential knowledge, who I am, a spirit, soul. What's my nature is not to realize I'm God and I just forgot. How did God forget? And our essential abhidaya, our essential activity is our essential activity is devotional service. That's the devotional service, and the fruits of that activity, love of God. I know myself, I'm endeavoring to practice bhakti yoga in the line of Prabhupada for about 40 years now. And love of God, I'm not feeling the love. So in a very encouraging way, Srila Prabhupada, he makes the point that if we're just doing sadhana bhakti, like here we are on a Saturday morning, Saturday evening for most of us, and we're giving time, we're giving energy, we're giving attention, we're giving our consciousness to the words of Arjuna, the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. So this, we must have some love, some spark of love. Like Prabhupada says that we're trying, we're making some effort. So that is the soul's intrinsic. Okay, we're good. Okay, yeah, and so it's all one in a sense. Vedanti tat titvavidas tatvam yajganam advayam, and it's realized in relatively more or less complete perspectives. Just like, okay, let's say if there's like a symphonic orchestra, and playing a piece of music. Okay, now I don't have much music appreciation. I'm not learned in the nuances and subtleties. And so I might, if someone say, what did you think of that symphony? And I might say, I liked it. It was good. Okay. Now someone else, I don't know what they would say, but I'm just making the principle here. Someone else who's really schooled and trained in the nuance and subtleties might say, yes, the way the violins and the percussive instruments and the harmonies, and they could talk. So it's the same symphony and we're both appreciating it. But we can say that, you know, the listener who's appreciating the fine subtleties has more complete appreciation than someone like Dhira Govinda Das, who just, yeah, it was good, I liked it. Okay, so similarly, appreciation of Brahman, the oneness of energies, that's appreciation of God, it's appreciation of the absolute, not to be minimized. And at the same time, so someone who's appreciating the variety, the nuance of the pastimes, the different rasas, the relationships, that this is, so this is, that's why Bhagavan realization, bhakti yoga, taking us to Brahman, so someone who's appreciating the nuance of the symphony, that includes, I liked it, it was good. So similarly, this Bhagavan realization, Krishna consciousness, bhakti yoga, it includes other aspects of God consciousness, Paramatma within the heart, Brahman realization. And yeah. So a theme, certainly a theme throughout Bhagavad Gita. So many processes are given. Jnana yoga, of course, this chapter 5, talks about Astanga yoga, and that all those processes, Varnashram, Karma yoga, all those processes, Yoginam api sarveshan madgatena antaratmana shadavan bhajateyumam samyukta tamomata. They all lead, if we carry on with perseverance after lifetimes and lifetimes, they all lead to bhakti yoga, love of God. And without dovetailing our activities in service to Krishna, then we might get some insight, but the heart won't be purified. So a theme throughout the Vedas is to make progress even in other disciplines requires some bhakti. Bhakti, that's really that transcendental self-revealing process that actually purifies the heart. Shrinvatam svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtanam vidyantastoya bhajani vidunoti saritsatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma super soul in the heart of all living entities, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, personally cleanses the heart from material desire for the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which in themselves are virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So like there's so many examples to illustrate this. There's the example of the 4 Kumaras. So they were impersonally realized. They had no material desire. And then, of course, there's the whole pastime with Jai and Vijay at the 7th gate of Vaikuntha. And the Kumaras got transcendentally angry because they were prevented from seeing Bhagavan Vishnu. And so then Vishnu comes along. So this is like, it's a very poignant example. So the Kumaras have no material desire, and they get captivated by a whiff of the fragrance of the tulasi flowers offered to the feet of Vishnu. Now we can say, so they smelled the flower, but no, it's not an ordinary flower. This is a philosophical principle. No, this is spiritual fragrance. This is spiritual fragrance. So yes, to realize to realize the temporary, flickering, superfluous nature of material energy, material fragrance, material dancing, material relationships, that is very helpful for spiritual life. In the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada gives the analogy of but that's just half the circle in relation to the banyan tree analogy, that the brilliant analogy that Krishna gives of the banyan tree. Yes, so the reflection of the tree with the branches down and the roots up. Yes, that's just there's no substance there. There's no actual fruit. There's no actual fruit. So to realize that this is all hollow and empty material life, that's an achievement. But Prabhupada says that many who endeavor for spiritual life, they stop there, and they're missing the other 180 degrees. So yes, this 180 degrees is just the shadow, and there's no substance in the shadow. At the same time, the shadow indicates there is substance that exists. So Prabhupada talks about the other 180 degrees. There is a real banyan tree. So there are real fruits that are spiritual, eternal. That's discussed. Prabhupada discusses that in the purports here. There's There's spiritual fragrance, spiritual dancing, spiritual friendship, spiritual romance, spiritual adventure, spiritual flute and rivers and sky. And so the Kumaras had no material attraction, so the fact that they were captivated by the fragrance of the tulasi flowers offered to the feet of Vishnu, that indicates, okay, so that's spiritual fragrance. And that indicates that Bhagavan realization is greater, more complete than, and inclusive of Brahman realization. Otherwise, Kumaras would not be attracted. Same principle with Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Atmaramash-tamunayon yugranti apyukrame kravantya hetukim bhaktim itam bhuta guno hari. That Shukadeva Goswami, he was in the womb of his mother. He was completely realized. He understood the futility of trying to be happy and peaceful in material life. He got that completely, so much so that he refused to come out of the womb. Like, I just don't want to do it. It's a waste of time. I don't want to risk getting ensnared by all this nonsense. And then his father Vyasadeva brought Krishna himself, and Krishna assured Shukadeva, you'll be okay, come out at 16 years, think of your poor mother. Anyhow, so then Shukadeva agreed to come out of the womb, and he wasn't attached to anything, didn't even say hello to his father. He just went off. His father's father. So similarly, Shukadeva was so much realized in the undifferentiated Brahman that when the damsels were bathing in the pond naked, they didn't even bother covering himself because they could see that he wasn't making any distinction, male body, female body. And when his father, who was in Grihastha ashram, followed, they covered, and Vyasadeva asked, well, why did you cover up for me but not for him? And they said, well, because of course Vyasadeva's pure soul, but Vyasadeva's in the role of Grihastha. So Shukadeva Goswami, and then Shukadeva Goswami, he heard some verses from Bhagavatam, he heard some verses about Krishna's pastimes, and he's attracted. So that indicates that these are not material pastimes, because Shukadeva Goswami has no material attraction to money or popularity or compliments or fame. He just has no material attraction, and he's attracted to hear about Krishna and the cowherd boys, indicating these are not mundane sportive pastimes. So Prabhupada uses a very powerful term here, a very powerful term, which struck me, that, so Prabhupada writes in the purport to text 37, to pursue the transcendental path is more or less to declare war on illusory energy. Okay, so of course we understand Srishti Stiti Pralaya Sadhana Shaktireka Cha Eva Yasya Bhuvanani Bibharta Durga Ichanarupam Apiyasya Chacheshtate Sa Govinda Mari Pusham Tamaham Bhajami. That Maya, the personification of the illusory energy, Durga, Kali, she is a great devotee of Krishna. And still, it's one devotee. She is one devotee that we're encouraged to declare war on. Okay, and this is such a head to declare war on the illusory energy. I remember once, like if we really want to progress, because she's very clever and like she's not like this hateful, malicious personality. It's just like, to associate with Krishna, Goloka Vrindavan, consciousness, whether in terms of consciousness or geography, it just means that the spirit soul has no other desire. So she's there to screen out the applicants for Goloka Vrindavan and to test us, to purify us. I remember once I was first exposed to Krishna consciousness in 1980 by taking a lot of prasad. at the State College Krishna Consciousness Center run by Stamba Das Prabhu back more than 40 years ago. And I actually moved into a Bhakti Yoga ashram in Ra'anana, Israel, outside of Tel Aviv in 1984. And I remember when I joined, there was one devotee, and we would have Saturday feast programs. Most of the world had Sunday feast. In Israel, the Shabbat is Friday night to Saturday night, and Sunday is a work day. And so it was Saturday love feast programs. And I was like a new bhakta. And there was one devotee, and he'd been in the movement since about maybe 6-7 years. And he was like, previously, like before I came, he was actually worldwide known as a star Sankirtan devotee, book distributor, Lakshmi collector. And he was no longer practicing. He was no longer practicing the sadhana of Krishna consciousness. And he used to come to our Saturday feasts. He clearly was a devotee at heart, but he had given up the practice in most respects. And I remember he told me, I was Bhakta Dev at the time, and he looked at me and he said, Bhakta Dev, I did not plan to leave Krishna consciousness. And then he said, but I did not make enough plans to stay. So that struck me. I'll just, to fast forward a bit, I a few years ago, I watched some video. I saw him on video, and he was leading Harinam Sankirtan. Of course, it's decades later in the streets of Tel Aviv. So, we all have our journey. But at that time, when I was a new bhakta, he said, yeah, I didn't plan to leave. I didn't make enough plans to stay. Meaning, it's one thing like, well, yeah, I'm not planning to leave, but like to really like consider how might Maya try to particularly entice me, because Maya is very clever, especially as we make advancements. Maya's attacks become more and more subtle. And so, yeah, so how are we going to resist the subtle seductions and attractions of Maya around, well, it could be gross sense gratification, it could be something that reminds us of an earlier time in life, some of distinction, adoration, profit, fame, in some subtle way. So to make plans means that we're really declaring war on the illusory energy. And I'm doing my best to try to foresee how the illusory energy will try to come through, will try to attack and trick me. Of course, work like everything depends on me, and pray like everything depends on Krishna and Srila Prabhupada. So both, that part of surrender doesn't mean to give up my intelligence. It means to dedicate myself to use my intelligence sharply to stay practicing with increasing enthusiasm in this process that Prabhupada gave us, and seeing, okay, like I'm weak. Let me take more and more shelter in the master of Maya. Devi Eshaguna Maya, Mama Maya Dharatya, Mameva Ye Prapadinte, Mayam Etam Tarantite. That Krishna says, yeah, this illusory energy, which is, Krishna described that it is a divine energy of Krishna. She's not like an enemy of God. It's not like the devil is an enemy of God. She's like the warden of the prison house. And the warden is a dear servant of the king, just as the director of the university system is a dear servant of the king. And the warden, Maya Durga, has a particularly thankless task dealing with those with criminal mentalities in the prison system. So, but Krishna says, very difficult to overcome, but one who takes shelter in me. And of course, we take shelter in Krishna through his pure devotee who knows Krishna well in Srila Prabhupada. And so, you know, I believe it's instructive that Arjuna is sharing his concerns, his doubts about, well, this practice is difficult. What about, I don't want to become like a riven cloud. And so again, Arjuna is so qualified. I've heard Gita hundreds and hundreds of times over 40 years. And for the most part, I'm still not getting it. And Arjuna heard Gita in maybe an hour, and he got it. And he got it, and he transformed his life. He transformed the direction of his activities. And so Arjuna is asking questions. And so you know, yeah. So I don't know. It can help us. It can help me to not feel foolishly proud, like I got this. That work like everything depends on me, and let me be more sincere, even in a healthy spiritual spirit of desperation. Like, please, Srila Prabhupada, please protect me from the tricks and onslaughts of this hugely powerful enemy, Maya. Let's make let's make plans to stay so that we continue with enthusiasm. So thanks for listening. And you know, I'd be glad to hear. I appreciate your association. If anyone has any questions, comments, realizations you'd like to ask or share, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, for your presentation and sharing. Any questions from any devotees? Please introduce yourself and ask the questions or make your comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much for your wonderful class. I was just wondering why do acharyas call Maya Devi sometimes as Pishachi or witch? So it's a very strong word to use. And she is just a servant of Krishna doing her job. But why is it that she's addressed like that sometimes? Could you comment on that?
Hey, thank you, Archana Mataji. Why do our acharyas? Sometimes refer to Maya Devi as a witch. Very strong negative terms. Okay. Because as we were discussing, she's a great demigoddess who's a pure devotee of Krishna. So why call her a witch? That's why I said it's an exceptional circumstance that like she's one devotee we can declare war on, war on Maya, war on the illusory energy. So so my understanding is like that, well, it's a matter of perspective and a matter of where we're at and a matter of service. So like, okay, for like an Uttama Adhikari, there is no Maya, right? Because an Uttama Adhikari is realizing Krishna everywhere. An Uttama Adhikari is good friends with Maya, Durga, and they're collaborating together to save the conditioned souls. So my understanding is that the acharyas are doing that when they're in a mood of feeling very, very humble and fallen, that they're in that mood. And like for us in our conditioned state where we're just like, speaking for myself, like Maya doesn't Maya doesn't need to work very hard to entrap me. I'm like the condition. We're like chasing Maya. We're like, where is Maya? Where is it? You know, like that. And so Maya needs to start working hard when someone decides, I'm going to get serious about a transcendental path, so that for the spirit soul in that very conditioned state, it can be helpful. It can be helpful to develop a sort of militaristic attitude towards Maya, an oppositional, and seeing Maya as the enemy. The enemy is the witch. We must kill the witch. So for the conditioned soul, that can be a helpful stage to see the pure devotee, the beautiful demigoddess Maya, pure devotee of Krishna, as in this very harsh way to support the conditioned soul to get serious about, like, I will not invite Maya into my life. So it's like, yeah, it's like you might say it's like a literary device to help the conditioned soul at certain stages to declare war. Like, this is an enemy soldier, witch. So, and then at other times or at other stages to appreciate Maya as Lord Brahma appreciates her, as she's serving Govinda with full devotion. So that's my understanding.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare
Any
Krishna.
other questions or comments from devotees? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Anybody? Devotees?
I see Gopinath took himself off mute, I saw.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for joining us today, and very happy with your insightful points today. Going back to the earlier point in your class, you were mentioning that naturally, if you want to learn something, we have to approach authority. And you were quoting Bhagavad Gita 434 about approaching the self-realized soul. Now, something interesting. This morning, I was on our local forum, it's a Malaysian forum, and this question it's a forum. Sometimes some interesting questions are raised. So one poster was raising what happens after death, and the topic was going on, and then one person mentioned that you see so much confusion, and God has to come back. God himself has to come back and of course clear the mess. Well, I answered him that well, the via medium of the spiritual master is there, and God's teaching has been recorded in the scripture. We can go through the instruction of the spiritual master to approach God. And he replied that yeah, but in this modern world there are so many imposters, spiritual teachers, imposters and everything. So he insists that God has to come back and sort things out. Then I referred him to Bhagavad Gita 4:34, the exact verse. You see, God himself, because he asked me the question, who certifies that master? I said, well, to answer the question, God himself. God himself certifies that pure devotee, and here's the answer is verse 4:34. You have to approach the self-realized soul. And how would you know that he is a self-realized soul? The characteristics of such a devotee is also mentioned in the Gita, and also methods of actually testing the spiritual master before you actually. I told him, if you want to delve deeper into it, there are so many methods of realizing this. I believe yes, somewhat accepted my point because he has not replied that. But Prabhu, I mean, is that the the best reply that I could have attempted for such an inquiry?
Well, in hearing you speak, Gopinath Prabhu, I'm gladdened to hear about your participation and contribution to that forum. It sounds like from what you're saying, it sounds like you're very effectively representing Prabhupada and giving the light.
Some multiple times, even earlier topics, generally about soul. These guys have generally have questions about like life after that. That's what they normally touch upon.
From what you described, I really like the way you responded. You responded with the guru principle. You gave them Bhagavad Gita. You're giving it as it is, and of course, Krishna is appearing himself, particularly in this age. His avatar is through the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. At the same time, we develop our direct relationship with God through Krishna's pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, in our case, Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah.
And so it's certainly a valid consideration. There are so many cheaters and so many bogus so-called gurus. So it's a valid consideration. We're very fortunate. We can say we're fortunate to have found Prabhupada, or we're fortunate that Prabhupada found us, however we want to look at it. Yeah, so I really like the way you responded. You gave the spiritual master principle, and that's so much not appreciated in this age and one reason is because there's so many cheaters. And so, but still the principle is true. And we, I don't know how it works mechanically. I don't know how it works, but we know that Prabhupada, for those who are certainly serving him, sincere disciples means disciplining our lives to serve him in his mission. Then Prabhupada's committed to his disciples to bring them back to Godhead, to complete.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I like that you responded with Bhagavad Gita 4.34. That sounds right on.
Okay. Thanks, Prabhu. That's nice to know.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Any
Krishna.
other questions, devotees? Anybody else? Looks like there are no other questions. Thank you so much, Dhira Govinda Prabhu, for being with us today.
I very much appreciate it. Thank you for your association. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Krishna.
Thank you, Dhira Govinda
Krishna.
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Devotees, stay for some announcements.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
So Monday is fasting for Ekadasi. Please take note. So next Saturday we will continue with the next part of the Bhagavad Gita coverage, and next week will be Sundari Mataji. Hare Krishna. Sundari Mataji will be covering the next few verses of Bhagavad Gita. Next week we will have it from 5 o'clock Singapore time, Singapore Malaysia time, and 2:30 India time. So I will see all of you next week then. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Prabhupada.